Your daughter-in-law is nothing but trash, Evelyn. She threw your granddaughter's blanket into the garbage like she was dumping a corpse. I thought it was just a cruel remark from a neighbor until I pulled the blanket out myself and felt the hard lump hidden inside something secret enough to burn Alyssa's entire life to ashes. But just a few seconds later, my whole world flipped upside down. The phone buzzed with a soft tick, and the sender's name appeared. Marcus, my son, who died 3 years ago. My hands trembled. If that was true, this was no longer a family matter. This was someone pulling strings from the dark. And I ask you, if it were you watching the villain toss evidence away like they're erasing their sins, would you stand up or stay silent and wait for your turn to be eliminated? Do you believe Alyssa is innocent, or is she the wolf in human skin? Follow to see the next chapter and tell me in the comments, whose side are you on? I am Evelyn Carter, 68 years old. My skin is dark like the red Georgia soil, the same soil that buried my parents and 3 years ago swallowed the only son I ever had. Since Marcus died, this house has echoed only with the wind slipping through old window frames and the sound of my own breath when sleep refuses to come. I live alone with faded picture frames, and Emma, my 3-year-old granddaughter, is the single beam of light that keeps my life from collapsing altogether. Every time I hold her, I feel as if I'm holding a piece of Marcus's soul the world didn't get the chance to take away. That afternoon, the sky was so gray, it stirred something uneasy inside me. I drove slowly to Alyssa's house, my daughter-in-law. I once tried to believe she truly loved Marcus, but the distance she has put between us these past 3 years has weighed on me like a stone. I came only to leave a few toys in the mailbox for Emma. I didn't want to intrude. I just wanted to be near that little girl in the softest way possible. But fate placed me there to witness something I'll never forget for as long as I live. From afar, I saw Alyssa step out the back door. Her face was beautiful, but cold, a kind of coldness that wasn't from the season, but from someone who had locked her heart long ago. She dragged several black trash bags, dropping them with enough force that the lid snapped open. And then I saw it, the thing that jolted my heart. Inside one of the bags gaping open lay Emma's mint green blanket, the one I knitted by hand during the first winter after she was born. The last keepsake Marcus ever held, the one he smiled at when he wrapped around his daughter. I stepped out of the car before I could think. My voice came out rough and heavy as stone. Why would you do that? That was Marcus's last keepsake. Alyssa turned her eyes, slicing through me as if I were a stranger inconveniencing her. She didn't flinch, didn't look embarrassed, didn't look sad, just empty. Don't say his name in front of me. That sentence stabbed through my chest, not because she said it loudly, but because she said it without a trace of feeling. Had Marcus really loved someone like this? Someone who treated his name like a forbidden word? Alyssa tied the bag shut, shoved it deeper into the bin, and walked back inside without another word. I stood there in the cold wind, staring at the mint green corner of the blanket, now stained and crushed. Every stitch I remembered knitting with all the hope of becoming a grandmother was treated like something rotten. I couldn't bear it. I opened the lid and pulled the trash bag out. The sharp smell rushed up, but I've long grown used to how life often smells like the things people want to forget. I dug through the bag until I found the blanket, folded it against my chest, and brushed off the dirt without even realizing I was doing it. That's when my fingers felt something hard beneath the fabric. At first, it was just a strange texture. Then I pressed lightly and felt the straight edges of something solid inside the soft knit. My heartbeat pushed hard against my ribs, not from curiosity alone, but from a feeling deep in my core. This moment was going to change everything. Marcus cherished this blanket. If someone had sewn something into it, they must have known he would never reveal it. I held the blanket close and hurried to the car. When the door shut, the silence inside felt suffocating. I spread the blanket out, sliding my fingers along the edge until I found it. A new seam, delicate and nearly invisible, perfectly matched in color. "Marcus, what are you trying to send me?" I whispered, trembling from fingertips to spine. I pinched a thread loose. The seam gave way, and a small black corner of something stiff appeared. My heart jerked. I pulled more of the knit fabric aside, slow but relentless. A small, old cell phone fell into my palm. Not just any cell phone, Marcus's cell phone, the one he used on the last day he was alive. I froze. The world outside held its breath with me. I knew then that my grief was no longer just sorrow. It had shifted into suspicion. A suspicion deep enough to drag the truth out of the shadows. And I felt with absolute clarity that my journey had just begun. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands clutching the faded blanket as if it could answer everything I feared to face. The black phone that had fallen from the fabric felt like a buried memory forced back into the light. It was cold, heavy, and carried the presence of a door someone had locked for 3 years. I inhaled deeply and placed my finger on the power button. The screen lit up instantly. I didn't enter a passcode, didn't press anything, yet it opened as if Marcus were standing behind me, placing an invisible hand on my shoulder and saying, "Mom, look." That glow tightened my chest. It was the phone. Police had claimed they never found the phone that held Marcus's most private moments, the phone that should have vanished with him. The photo album appeared first. I hadn't even decided to tap it when it opened on its own. The first picture was Alyssa. She sat in an elegant restaurant, her head tilted, smiling. A strange man rested his hand on her back, close enough to erase any doubt. A chill swept through me. The next photos were worse, the two of them hugging inside a car reflected in mirrors, their fingers interlocked under the table, all taken while Marcus was still alive. I set the phone down, but it vibrated as if insisting. My heart pounded harder, every rhythm shaking my ribs. I opened the messages. Sender, Alyssa. The first line hit me like a slap. If Marcus disappeared, everything would be easier. I collapsed into the chair. The room spun. Every nerve in my body strained as if about to snap. I read it again. Each word drained the breath from my lungs. Marcus once said Alyssa was changing. I dismissed it, told him women get anxious after childbirth. I believed her. I let her hold my granddaughter every morning. Now, each message on the screen shredded that trust into pieces. But then I paused. Some messages looked wrong. The tone was stiff, dry, missing Alyssa's usual abbreviations. The punctuation felt unnatural. Even the way she addressed him was strange. I stared at a string of them. "I want him out of my life. I'm done. I'll handle it." That wasn't Alyssa's voice. I leaned against the wall, feeling my heartbeat quicken. If someone was imitating her, then that person wanted her in the dark. Perhaps they wanted me to hate her, to suspect her, so I would look away from the real hand behind all of this. I remembered Alyssa's expression when confronted about the blanket. Cold, yes, but not malicious. And in her eyes, there was a flicker of fear that now crawled across my skin. The phone suddenly lit again. I jumped because I had turned on airplane mode. I checked the corner of the screen. No signal, no Wi-Fi, no data. Yet a new message appeared. No sender, no number, no name. Only one line glowing through the dark like someone whispering at my neck. "You have opened a door you should not have opened." I gripped the phone, breath trapped in my throat. It felt like someone in the shadows was watching me, had been watching me for years. I remained frozen, staring at the phone with its blinking red dot, feeling as if it were watching every breath I took. In the dim house, with only the ticking of the clock, I could hear the trembling in my own breathing. The air thickened, heavy, as if something unseen was slowly approaching. Then, suddenly, a knock echoed through the house, sharp, firm, cold. I jolted upright, my hand gripping the edge of the table. The knocking continued, 3 steady beats, like someone who knew exactly how long I would hesitate. I walked to the door, each step weighing down my legs as though they were made of stone. Through the fogged glass, I saw a man standing straight, motionless, like a solitary shadow cut out of the night. I opened the door. A man appeared under the dim hallway light. His beard was uneven, his jaw set sharply, and his eyes cold and deep, as if they could see straight through me. He raised a badge, his voice low yet clear. Detective Logan Graves. I couldn't hide my fear. Why are you here at this hour? Graves didn't step inside immediately, but his gaze swept through the house behind me as if he already knew everything inside its walls. Then he said something that froze every muscle in my body. "Mrs. Evelyn, you found the phone they believed no one alive could ever find." I stood still, feeling the blood stop moving in my veins. I hadn't told anyone. I hadn't called anyone. I hadn't stepped outside for even a moment. How did he know? I whispered. Who told you? Who knows about this? Graves stepped inside and closed the door with a soft but chilling click. He walked straight to the table, eyes fixed on the phone still lying there. His expression wasn't angry or shocked, but rather the look of someone who had followed this trail for a very long time. He sat down, meeting my eyes. "You opened it, didn't you?" I nodded, my throat dry. "I saw some messages, some strange things." Graves exhaled slowly, resting his hands on his knees. "They buried that phone because it holds what they fear most, the truth." A shiver ran through me. What truth? He studied me for a long moment before speaking. "Before I tell you more, you need to stay calm. This will change the way you see everyone." I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. Graves leaned back, his voice sinking into a grim weight. "Your granddaughter, Emma, is not Alyssa's biological child." The room exploded in silence. I stumbled backward, clutching my stomach as if holding myself together. Why would you say that?" Graves reached into his coat and pulled out a carefully wrapped stack of papers. He placed it on the table and turned it toward me. "Because I found Emma's original birth certificate." Before I could react, he opened the document. The printed line hit me like a blade. "Mother's name, Lauren Whitaker." I shook my head instantly. No, Alyssa was pregnant. I took her to appointments. I watched her belly grow month after month. Graves looked at me with an expression that mixed pity and warning. "There are things you see that may not be real, and things in a hospital that someone with power can fabricate." I stepped closer, my hands trembling so hard I needed the table to stay upright. "Who is Lauren?" Graves answered, "A woman who disappeared 4 years ago." My blood ran cold. "You're telling me Emma belongs to a missing woman? Then Alyssa, where did she get that child?" Graves didn't answer right away. He simply watched me, his eyes darkening. "That is what you need to uncover before it's too late." I stared at the birth certificate. The name Lauren Whitaker seemed to blur, sink, and rise again in my vision, mixing with every memory I had and every one I was trying to piece together. Graves stood, pulled a photograph from his pocket, and placed it beside the certificate. "You need to see this." The photo showed a young woman holding newborn Emma, her face pale, her eyes bright and deep. And in those eyes, I saw something that chilled every inch of me. They looked like Marcus's eyes. I whispered, trembling. "Why are you telling me this? Why appear tonight?" Graves met my gaze, his voice heavy as metal. "Because the last person who saw Lauren before she vanished was not a stranger." I stayed rooted to the floor, my hand curling into a fist. I stood frozen, my eyes fixed on the birth certificate, as if blinking would make the words disappear. But no, the name Lauren Whitaker stayed right there, sharp and painfully real. I raised a hand to cover the trembling in my breath. Emma, the child I held every night, the child Marcus once carried in his arms, might not be his blood at all. My legs weakened and I sank into the nearest chair. My voice came out like air escaping my chest. "Lauren, so is Emma my granddaughter or not?" Graves watched me for a long moment, his eyes holding no judgment, only the exhaustion of someone who had witnessed too many cruel truths. He answered, his voice steady and low, "Blood or not, Emma chose you." Tears fell before I could wipe them. I remembered Emma's eyes whenever she ran to cling to my legs, her tiny hands grabbing my blouse, the way she rested her head on my shoulder and slept as if the world ended outside that moment. But love couldn't silence the deeper question piercing through me. So who was Lauren? Why did she disappear? Graves opened the file he brought. He pulled out several old pages yellowed at the corners. Lauren reported that someone was following her, a nurse who showed up at her appointments outside her home, even shadowing her on the street. I read the descriptions and felt a cold mist crawl across my skin. In Lauren's words was panic, suspicion, the sense of being watched by someone wearing a hospital badge who never spoke. Graves continued his tone slower. After Lauren filed the complaint, her entire record vanished from the hospital system. No trace, no archive, no mention of her name anywhere. I looked up, my heart pounding. Erasing a patient's entire file, only someone with enormous power could do that. Graves nodded. Enormous power. I gripped the edge of the table, feeling as though a blade was slicing through every line of thought I tried to form. Lauren vanished, her files erased, Emma taken from her. None of it was accidental. I stood deciding to confront the only person still alive who could explain anything, Alyssa. She was standing near the stairs, her body tense as though ready to run. When I approached her, her eyes flickered between guilt and fear. I held my voice steady. "Alyssa, Emma isn't your child." "So where did you get her?" Alyssa shook her head so hard her hair fell over half her face. Her voice cracked, shattering into broken sounds. "I didn't steal anyone's baby. I was forced." I stepped closer. "Who forced you?" She backed into the wall, her hands clasping tightly, as if trying to stop a tremor deep inside. Tears streamed down her face, but the panic in her eyes was what chilled me. I don't know how to explain," she choked out, "but from the moment I found out I was pregnant, someone followed me, appeared at every appointment, every time I left the hospital. She told me I had to obey or I would disappear like Lauren. The whole house seemed to tilt around me. Graves remained still behind me, but I saw his eyes tighten like he had expected this, but still dreaded hearing it. I placed a hand on Alyssa's shoulder, my voice hoarse. Her name. Alyssa lifted her head, her eyes red and trembling. She inhaled and spoke each word falling heavy as stone. Dr. Mara Livingston. At that name, my entire body went cold. The air in the room felt sucked out, leaving a thick, alarming silence. I looked at Alyssa, then at Graves. He said nothing, but the quiet in his eyes confirmed that this went far deeper, darker, and more dangerous than anything I had imagined. Alyssa covered her face and sobbed. She said it was the only way I could stay alive. I felt my heartbeat slow, each thump heavy. Mara Livingston, the doctor I once trusted, the woman who smiled so kindly during Alyssa's pregnancy checkups, was standing behind everything, and the clearest feeling inside me was this: I was only standing at the first step of a deep abyss. I stared at the envelope Graves placed on the table. A part of me wanted to open it immediately. Another part trembled at whatever might be waiting inside. The old ache from the early days after losing Marcus rose again, like a shadow returning to grip my throat. Graves sat across from me, his eyes growing more solemn. He knew what I was about to hear would change everything. I braced myself against the table, trying to steady my voice. "If this has anything to do with Marcus, you need to tell me now." Graves nodded, his gaze dimming. "To understand what comes next, you need to remember the day Marcus died." I closed my eyes, my body sinking back into the memory I had tried to lock away for 3 long years. It was a cold afternoon, the sky heavy with gray. I was making coffee when the phone rang, Alyssa's panicked voice screaming that Marcus had fallen down the stairs, unconscious. I grabbed the nearest coat and drove like someone possessed. When I arrived at the hospital, it was already too late. I opened my eyes, my breathing heavy. Marcus was never careless. My son spent his life saving people. He knew every step in that house. My voice cracked. Graves watched me with a weighted sympathy. "And because of that," he said, "he became a target." The words sent a chill through my spine. My mind returned to the emergency room that day, to the image of Marcus lying motionless under those pale hospital lights, and pain tightened around my chest again. I whispered, my hands trembling, "Do you have proof?" Graves pulled an old autopsy report from the envelope, the edges worn. He unfolded it on the table, turning it toward me. "This is the original report, the one before it was altered." I leaned in and read line by line. My heart stuttered when I reached the notation: strong compression marks on left and right wrists, symmetrical in shape. I shot to my feet, the chair tipping behind me. "Those are restrike marks," I cried, my palms damp with sweat. Who tied my son? Who dragged him down the stairs? Graves held his calm. According to the initial findings, Marcus didn't fall on his own. He was held, pushed, or pulled hard from behind. I staggered back, the floor under me feeling unsteady. Marcus, my strong, gentle Marcus, had died in fear. The thought cracked something in me. I clutched the table to keep myself upright. "Why?" I asked, my voice dry. "Why would someone do that to him?" Graves placed another document on the table. "Do you remember who led the medical team that day?" A face rose in my memory, hair tied back, eyes sharp as a scalpel. Someone I once trusted completely when Alyssa was pregnant. My pulse jumped. "You're talking about Mara Livingston." Graves held my gaze. "Yes." I collapsed back into the chair. I remembered Mara telling me coldly that Marcus died too quickly, that nothing could be done. I had believed her. I had bowed my head and believed her. Graves flipped the autopsy report to the last page. This record was replaced just hours after Marcus's death. The person who signed the revision was Dr. Mara Livingston. I stared at the signature, feeling as if someone had struck me across the face. "Important injuries removed, replaced with a cleaner narrative. No signs of external trauma beyond the fall." She covered it up, I whispered. She erased the bruises. She hid the truth. Graves set a photograph on the table. Mara, in her white coat, chart in hand, eyes cold enough to chill the skin of anyone who looked at her. Why, I repeated, my voice breaking, why was Marcus her target? Graves took another envelope from his pocket and placed it before me. He didn't open it. He watched me for a long moment, then said, "Because Marcus knew her secret." Words caught in my throat. What secret? Graves rose, stepping to the door as if checking for eavesdroppers. The room fell silent, so quiet I could hear each tick of the wall clock. He returned his expression, grave enough to cool the air around us. "Victoria, you must prepare yourself before you see what's inside that envelope." I touched the edge of the envelope, feeling like I was pressing my hand against the door to something darker than anything I had faced. Graves spoke slowly, every word dropping like a weight onto the floor. "If you open it, you will know why Marcus had to die." From the moment I understood Marcus had been murdered, the air around me changed. Rooms that once felt calm now seemed to hold something lurking in the corners. Wherever I went, I sensed eyes trailing me. I kept Emma close every night because I felt the thing watching us wanted more than to intimidate. It wanted to erase everything, including me. One evening after Emma had fallen asleep, I heard a soft click at the front door. A small sound, yet enough to make my skin prickle. I stepped into the living room, turned on the light, and saw the lock pried open. On the floor lay a folded piece of paper. I picked it up, my hand trembling because I knew something had officially begun. Under the light, a single messy line appeared, "Return, Emma." I clenched the note, a wave of anger and fear rising inside me. My eyes scanned the house, wondering how long the intruder had stood outside. Whether they had watched me through the windows? Whether they knew which room Emma slept in? I realized that from the moment I opened Graves's envelope, I had stepped onto a battlefield where the other side was willing to kill to keep a secret. The next morning, I called Alyssa over. She walked into the house looking like a shadow, her face pale, her eyes sunken, as if she hadn't slept for days. The moment she saw me, she broke down, dropping onto the couch. "I thought they'd let me go if I stayed quiet," she said through broken breaths. I thought I could get out." Her trembling voice sounded like shattering glass. I wanted to be angry, to shout at her that her silence had cost Marcus his life and put Emma in danger. But when I looked at her curled up like a trapped bird, the anger melted into a numb pity. She had lived too long under Mara Livingston's shadow. Someone like Mara didn't need weapons to threaten. She used fear like a blade. I placed a hand on Alyssa's shoulder. "You have to tell everything. If not both, you and Emma will lose any chance to survive." Alyssa looked at me with panic in her eyes. "You don't understand. If you keep digging, she'll do to you what she did to Lauren." Hearing Lauren's name chilled the room. I stood up, quickly walked to the window, and peered at the empty street. Maybe the one watching us stood at the corner. Maybe their eyes were cutting through the glass. For the first time, I sensed the darkness approaching like a living thing. Just as I reached for my phone to call Graves, it buzzed in my hand. Unknown number. I didn't answer. A message arrived immediately after. "He's been arrested." I frowned, confusion tightening my chest. Then the roar of engines echoed outside, red lights flashing. I ran to the porch. 4 FBI cars stopped in front of Graves's house. I shouted to Alyssa, "Watch Emma," and rushed towards the scene. When I got there, 2 agents were handcuffing Graves, his face calm, but his shoulders tense. Charges falsifying evidence and obstructing investigation. I nearly broke down. No, Grave is the only one helping me. An agent pushed me aside, speaking coldly. He altered autopsy files and accessed classified data. "You should be careful who you trust." Graves turned his head toward me. His eyes carried words no one else could hear. He exhaled heavily. "Victoria, don't let them stop you." Then the car door slammed shut, the sound slicing through what little hope I had left. I stood there, dust swirling around my feet, feeling hollow. If Graves was taken, someone orchestrated it. Someone wanted to pull the ground out from beneath me. A familiar tactic of those with power and dangerous secrets. Back home, I shut the door and locked every bolt, my palms damp. My phone vibrated again. Another text from the same number. I opened it. One sentence, short and sharp like a needle pressed to skin. "It's not Graves you should fear, the one who buried Marcus." My heart dropped. I looked toward the dark hallway leading to Emma's room. A horrifying thought hit me. The one who buried Marcus wasn't the person who signed the certificate, but the puppet master in the dark. I carried Emma out of the empty room, my legs shaking so badly I almost collapsed. Just minutes earlier, she had been sleeping there. Alyssa was frantically searching every corner while I struggled to keep my breath from breaking into screams. Thankfully, Emma was hiding under the kitchen table, her eyes wet with fear. I held her tight, my heart torn between relief and terror. When I placed Emma in her room and locked the door, a strange pull brought me back to the envelope Graves had left behind. I opened it, flipping through each sheet until I touched a small silver USB drive with a symbol etched on the back. The letter M. Marcus's handwriting. My heart clenched. I opened my laptop and plugged in the USB. A single folder appeared titled "For Mom." I took a long breath and clicked. The screen stayed black for a few seconds. Then Marcus appeared. My son sat in his hospital office, staring straight into the camera. The dim light made him look tired and wary. I covered my mouth to stop a cry from breaking out. "If you're watching this, it means I'm gone," Marcus said, his voice low but steady. "I found the truth, and I know they won't let me live." His words chilled me completely. I wanted to reach through the screen, tell him I was here, tell him I should have come sooner. Marcus continued, "There's a ring inside this hospital. They target single mothers, women with no family, immigrants, anyone who disappears without questions." I sat up straighter, bracing myself. "The leader is Dr. Mara Livingston. She picks healthy women close to term, then makes them vanish. Their newborns are sold overseas or placed into selected families to erase the trail." The air thickened around me. I no longer felt the chair beneath me. Everything turned into a burning mix of horror and rage. Marcus went on. Lauren Whitaker was one of them. She came to me for help. She said someone was watching her. Someone wanted her baby. I tried to protect her, but it was too late. They were preparing to erase all her records. The USB felt heavier in my hand, 10 times its real weight. I remembered Lauren's eyes in the photograph Graves showed me, eyes that seemed to plead for help. On the screen, Marcus paused, swallowing hard, as if gathering the courage to continue. I collected a list. "Mom, you have to keep it. If you expose it, this operation won't stay buried." He opened a file, scrolling through a long list. The images were blurry, but clear enough, dozens of names. Women reported missing in old news articles. Women with infants. Women whose bodies were never found. Lauren was 8th on the list. My insides twisted like someone was wringing them. "Oh God, Marcus," I whispered. "You carried all this fear alone." The video ended. The screen went black. I stared at the list, each name flicking at a nerve inside me. Mara had forced. Alyssa had taken Emma, had killed Lauren, had killed Marcus. That woman used an entire hospital as the stage for crimes that looked like charity from the outside. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat beside Emma's bed holding Marcus's USB like a weapon. Every small noise startled me. Near midnight, slow footsteps sounded outside the porch. A shadow stretched across the glass. I stood, pulling Emma deeper into the room, my ear against the wall. The person breathed like a predator savoring the hunt. Then a deep, dragging voice echoed in the darkness. "Bring the girl Emma out." I held Emma tight against my chest, my hands shaking but firm. "Get away from my house," I whispered harshly. "You will never take her." A raspy laugh rose. "That's not your choice." I heard movement at the front door, metal scraping. Someone was working the lock. I pulled the curtain aside, peering through the crack that saw only a shadow pressed to the glass. I lifted Emma into my arms, pressing her cheek against my shoulder. "You must not cry," I whispered. "I will protect you." In my other hand, I clutched Marcus's USB, the only evidence, the reason my son died, the reason Emma was being hunted. The lock clicked. I heard the door being kicked open. I turned to barricade the bedroom door, but a crashing sound erupted behind me. The window shattered glass, exploding into the room in a cold rush of wind. A hand reached through the broken frame, feeling along the inside for the latch. I stood with my back pressed against the wall, holding Emma tightly as the hand outside the window tried to reach the latch. The intruder's breathing mixed with the sound of shattering glass made the room feel smaller. I clutched the child, my heartbeat pounding so hard it hurt. Just when I prepared to rush toward the door to block it, a loud noise erupted in the yard, followed by footsteps fleeing into the night. The intruder vanished. I still didn't understand what had happened until I heard someone softly call my name from the darkness of the porch. I turned, breath caught in my throat. Graves stood there, half his body stained with blood, his face bruised, but his eyes sharp and awake. The dim streetlight cast a trembling shadow of him across the concrete. I couldn't believe my own eyes. Graves! He raised a hand to silence me and stepped into the house, closing the door behind him. His breathing was heavy but controlled. "Mara sent someone to kill me," he said in a low, rough voice. "But the FBI, they arrested me to keep me out of her reach." I looked at the wounds on his face, fear chilling my skin. "You came back, even after being beaten like this?" Graves leaned on a chair, suppressing the pain. "I had to come back, for you and for Emma." I sat down, Emma still trembling in my arms. Graves crouched to look at her, his eyes softening for a brief moment. "She's the most important victim. Mara wants to erase everything connected to Lauren." Hearing Lauren's name tightened something sharp inside my chest. "Graves, you need to tell me everything. What has Mara really done?" He nodded and dropped a heavy folder onto the table. Mara needed Emma to legitimize Lauren Whitaker's disappearance. She fabricated a pregnancy file for Alyssa, turned Alyssa into the legal mother, then buried everything about Lauren. I gripped my head, fingers cold and trembling. Then Marcus Graves exhaled slowly, as if he were holding himself together while reopening a wound. Marcus discovered Lauren's plea for help. He started digging through the hospital records. He found the list of missing women. When he was getting ready to report it, Mara found out. I felt the chair slipping beneath me. The air thickened until it tasted like metal. "She killed Lauren, then killed Marcus," Graves said. They were the only two who knew too much. I closed my eyes as tears spilled out, silent and hot. The pain was too large to break into sobs. Marcus, my son, died because he tried to protect a woman no one knew was in danger. A mother desperate for help, a child stolen, and a monster disguised as a doctor. I wiped my face, looked straight at Graves. What do I have to do now to end this? Graves opened my laptop on the table. He inserted Marcus's USB and brought up the list of victims. The light from the screen lit half his face, the vein along his temple tightening. We're sending everything to the federal agencies. This list, Marcus's video, the altered autopsy, Alyssa's statement. You won't fight alone anymore. I nodded, feeling something solid forming in my chest. Then we do it now. Graves transferred all the data into his encrypted drive and launched a secure uploader. He sent everything, one file at a time, every image, every word of Marcus left behind. I stood behind him, watching the progress bar move like a slow healing of wounds I'd lived with for years. When the last file finished uploading, Graves said, "Once the federal office gets this, Mara won't be able to hide." I exhaled relief, loosening my ribs for the first time in days. But it didn't last long. My phone vibrated suddenly. I looked at the screen, a message from Emma's daycare. Just one short line. Emma was taken by a stranger. We have called the police. I dropped the phone, breath collapsing in my chest. Graves snatched the screen and read it, his eyes instantly darkening. Graves and I sped through the night, the car slicing the air on the road leading out of town. The threatening message, the GPS trail he pulled from the cameras near the preschool, all of it brought us to an abandoned building behind the old hospital. I stepped out of the car, the cold air biting my skin, but powerless against the fear and fury surging inside me. Graves held a flashlight, signaling me to stay close behind him. We walked through the dark hallway, the lingering smell of old disinfectant clinging to the air like the remnants of the lives that had been taken here. The final door at the end of the hall was slightly open. I froze when I recognized the faint sobbing inside. I pushed the door. The light from the hallway spilled into the room and revealed a sight that slashed straight through my chest. Emma was tied to a chair, her eyes terrified, her cheeks streaked with tears. My knees nearly gave out, but Graves steadied me. Mara Livingston stood beside the child, her white coat wrinkled, the latex gloves on her hands catching the dim light of the old clinic. She tilted her head at me, her lips curling into a mocking smirk. "This child," Mara said, her voice smooth like a lecture, "is worth more than a life." I felt something break inside me. Every image of Marcus rushed in, every hidden wound, every plea from Lauren, every time Emma wrapped her little arms around my neck and cried. All of it collided, creating a force so strong I no longer felt fear. I lunged forward despite Graves trying to hold me back. "My son died because of you," I shouted, my voice cracking with rage and grief. "I won't let you take anyone else." Mara laughed, a cold, hollow sound, then revealed a syringe hidden in her sleeve. "I don't take," she said, "I choose." She stepped closer to Emma, lifting her hand as if to plunge the needle into my granddaughter's small arm. Graves moved instantly, drawing his gun. "Put it down, now." Mara paused, glancing at him with disdain. "You really think you can play this game with me, Detective Graves?" She shifted to the side, gripping Emma's shoulder tightly, using the child as a shield. Emma screamed, her cry twisting my insides like a blade. Graves kept his composure, inching forward. "Mara, you've been exposed. Every file is now in federal hands. Sooner or later, you will pay." "I will pay," Mara sneered. "You think one list can topple me? I've done this for decades. No one saved them. No one found me." I clenched my fists, stepping forward. Tonight, they will. Just as Mara tried to drag Emma away, sirens wailed outside, followed by pounding footsteps. Federal agents burst into the room like a flood breaking a dam, their flashlights slashing through the darkness. Mara spun around, eyes wide in shock. She attempted to yank Emma with her, but Graves lunged, pulling the child free and pushing her into my arms. 2 agents tackled Mara. She fought violently, her eyes blazing red with rage, her screams echoing through the old clinic like an animal being cornered. But it ended in seconds, a clean strike from one agent, knocking her to her knees, the metallic click of handcuffs snapping shut around her wrists. I held Emma tightly, tears spilling onto her hair. Graves stood beside us, breathing hard but relieved. For the first time in years, I felt light pierce the darkness. It seemed like everything was finally ending, the horror, the grief, the unanswered questions. But Mara, even with her hands bound, refused to leave without one last strike. As the agents dragged her toward the door, she looked back at me with an unsettling confidence, a look that made my spine turn cold. She smiled a slow and knowing smile, as though I still understood nothing. Before she disappeared down the hallway, Mara said, enunciating each word, "I am not the only one collecting children." I stood in the federal courthouse as the final strike of the gavel echoed through the room. Mara Livingston's name was read aloud in a silence so heavy it felt sacred, and her sentence left no doorway for darkness to return. 6 life sentences without parole. I closed my eyes as whispers rippled around me, feeling a weight I had carried for years finally torn away from my chest. Agents immediately sealed off her hospital. Buried files were dragged into the light, each investigation unfolding each missing mother's name spoken again with solemn respect. I stood beside Graves in the corridor, watching doors being taped shut. He said quietly, "Evelyn, this day should have come long ago." Alyssa was escorted out in handcuffs. When she passed me, she paused. Her face was weary, her once cold eyes now carrying the weight of regret. She whispered, "I was wrong. I'll pay for it. Just protect Emma." I answered, "Emma still has a path forward. And you too, if you truly repent." That was the last time I saw her. The court sentenced her to 18 years, long enough to punish her, long enough for her to understand everything she had allowed to happen. In the weeks that followed, I worked endlessly with lawyers and social services. When the final document was signed, I became Emma's legal guardian. She ran into my arms when I told her, "I get to stay with Mom, Grandma, right?" I nodded. "You'll stay with me, always." Graves had his name restored as well. The false accusations against him were erased. He received a special commendation for helping dismantle Mara's operation. I sat in the back row at the ceremony, applauding as he walked up to receive his medal. His eyes found mine in the crowd, and he gave a small, grateful nod. As for Emma, therapy helped her slowly reopen her heart. The early shadows in her eyes softened. One morning, she burst into my room with a smile I thought I might never see again. "Mom, Grandma, I want to go back to school." I hugged her, feeling something inside me ignite with hope. One golden afternoon after the trial, Emma and I sat on the porch. The mint blanket lay spread out under the soft sunlight. I traced the seams with my fingers, remembering how it once hid the phone that led me into a nightmare, then placed it gently beside her. "What once covered the dark now keeps you warm," I said. Emma wrapped her arms around me, her voice tender as a late summer breeze. "Mom, Grandma, we're safe now." I closed my eyes, letting the moment carve itself into my heart like a blessing after years of shadow. But when I opened them, I noticed a silhouette standing by the fence in the distance, a man in a long coat holding a thick folder under one arm. He stared in our direction, then slowly tilted the folder, just enough for me to read the words on the cover, "Mara Case, Part 2. I tightened my hold on Emma, my heartbeat catching. A sudden wind swept across the yard, lifting the mint blanket into a soft flutter. In the quiet that followed, I realized something evil may leave scars, but love leaves roots. And as long as Emma held my hand, no shadow could ever claim us again.